The message does not arrive from outside sources, nor does it depend on the noise of the world to announce itself. It originates from a place far more intimate and at the same time far more unfamiliar, the deeper self that exists beneath your conscious awareness. This part of you is not shaped by expectations, social roles, or the constant need to adapt. It exists prior to all of that, observing silently while you construct an identity that can survive in the external world. Most people spend their lives responding to voices that are not truly their own. These voices come from family, culture, education, and the endless pressure to belong. Over time, they become so internalized that they feel indistinguishable from personal truth. Yet beneath this layer of borrowed convictions, something remains untouched. It does not argue loudly or demand attention in obvious ways. Instead, it communicates through subtle disturbances, moments of discomfort, unexplained dissatisfaction, or a persistent feeling that something essential has been overlooked. This deeper self does not speak the language of convenience. It does not reassure you when you drift away from authenticity. Its message is often disruptive because it challenges the structure you have built to maintain stability. It reveals contradictions between what you claim to value and what you actually live. It exposes the gap between your outer performance and your inner reality. And because of this, it is often ignored, suppressed, or rationalized away. Yet ignoring it does not silence it. The message continues to emerge, finding new ways to surface in your thoughts, your dreams, and your emotional responses. It becomes present in the choices that feel strangely heavy, in the paths that seem successful yet empty, and in the quiet realization that fulfillment cannot be manufactured through external achievements alone. To recognize that this message comes from within is to confront a difficult truth. You are not as unified as you appear. There is a part of you that lives and a part of you that watches. The watching self holds knowledge that the living self often avoids. It sees the patterns you repeat, the compromises you justify, and the potential you leave unrealized. This inner source does not aim to comfort or to please. It exists to bring alignment, even if that process requires discomfort. Its urgency lies in its persistence, in the way it refuses to disappear despite your attempts to silence it, and in the quiet certainty that what it carries is not optional but essential. You move through the world with a sense of continuity, believing yourself to be a single, coherent identity. You speak, decide, and act as though there is one unified center guiding it all. Yet beneath this surface lies a division that is rarely acknowledged. There is the self you present, structured, acceptable, shaped by expectation, and there is the self that remains hidden, unfiltered, and often unrecognized. The presented self is carefully constructed. It is influenced by the need to belong, to succeed, to be understood in ways that align with social norms. Over time, it becomes refined through feedback, approval, and rejection. You learn which parts of yourself are rewarded and which are discouraged, and you adjust accordingly. This process feels natural, even necessary, because it allows you to function within a larger system, but it comes at a cost. The hidden self does not disappear in this process. It withdraws. It holds everything that does not fit the image you maintain: impulses, fears, desires, contradictions, and possibilities that remain unexplored. This is not a separate entity, but an integral part of who you are, pushed into the background because it complicates the narrative you have chosen to live by. The tension between these two aspects is subtle at first. It may appear as a vague sense of unease, a feeling that something is slightly misaligned. You might notice it when your actions feel disconnected from your deeper inclinations, or when your achievements fail to bring the satisfaction you expected. This is not a failure of effort or ambition, but a signal of division. As this split deepens, the energy required to maintain the presented self increases. You begin to rely more heavily on external validation to sustain it, while the hidden self becomes more insistent in its attempts to be acknowledged. This can manifest in unpredictable ways: sudden emotional reactions, recurring doubts, or an inexplicable urge to disrupt the path you have carefully built. The difficulty lies in the fact that both selves are real. The one you present is not false, but it is incomplete. The hidden self is not an obstacle, but it is unintegrated. To live without recognizing this division is to operate under the illusion of wholeness, while quietly experiencing fragmentation. This divided identity shapes your decisions in ways you do not fully perceive. It influences what you pursue, what you avoid, and how you interpret your own experiences. It creates patterns that repeat, not because you lack awareness, but because part of you remains excluded from conscious participation. To acknowledge this division is not to reject the self you have built, but to recognize that it is only one part of a larger whole that continues to exist beyond your immediate awareness. From the moment you become aware of the world, you begin to absorb it. Ideas, values, fears, ambitions, none of these arrive as neutral elements. They are carried through the voices that surround you, through the structures that shape your upbringing, and through the subtle pressure to adapt. What begins as influence gradually transforms into internal conviction, until it becomes difficult to distinguish what originated within you and what was placed there. You learn what is desirable before you understand why. You are told what success looks like before you question whether it aligns with your nature. You inherit fears that were never examined, anxieties that do not belong to your direct experience, and expectations that quietly dictate the direction of your life. These elements embed themselves deeply, forming a framework through which you interpret reality. Because they have been present for so long, they feel natural. You defend them as your own, act upon them without hesitation, and build your identity around them. Yet there are moments when this structure reveals its instability. You may find yourself pursuing something with intensity, only to realize that its fulfillment feels hollow. You may avoid certain paths without understanding the origin of that resistance. These are indications that the beliefs guiding you have not been consciously chosen. The difficulty lies in the fact that inherited beliefs often provide a sense of order. They simplify decision-making and offer a clear direction, even if that direction is misaligned with your deeper inclinations. To question them introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is something most people are conditioned to avoid. It disrupts the illusion of certainty that makes life feel manageable. Yet beneath this layer of borrowed structure, there exists a more authentic orientation, one that is not imposed but discovered. It does not emerge all at once, nor does it present itself in a fully formed state. Instead, it reveals itself through friction. It appears when your actions feel forced, when your motivations feel disconnected, and when your sense of purpose becomes unclear despite external progress. To recognize that you are carrying beliefs that are not truly yours is to confront the possibility that much of what you have accepted as truth has never been examined. It requires you to trace your convictions back to their origin, to question whether they arise from direct understanding or from unchallenged inheritance. This process is not about rejecting everything you have been given, but about discerning what resonates with your deeper self and what merely persists out of habit or conditionally. What remains after this examination is not immediate clarity, but a more honest starting point from which your own perspective can begin to take shape. There is a particular kind of tension that does not announce itself loudly. It does not erupt into immediate crisis or demand urgent attention in obvious ways. Instead, it develops gradually, almost imperceptibly, as a quiet accumulation of unresolved contradictions within you. This tension is not caused by external circumstances alone, but by the distance between what you live and what you know, even if that knowledge remains just outside your full awareness. At first, ignoring this inner signal seems harmless. Life continues, responsibilities are fulfilled, and outwardly everything appears stable. You adapt, adjust, and move forward, convincing yourself that discomfort is simply part of the process. Yet what is ignored does not dissolve. It remains active beneath the surface, shaping your experience in subtle but persistent ways. This tension often reveals itself through restlessness. You may feel a constant need to stay occupied, to fill your time with activity or distraction. Not because there is too much to do, but because stillness allows something deeper to emerge. In moments of silence, the awareness you have avoided begins to take form, and with it comes a sense of unease that is difficult to explain. It can also appear as dissatisfaction without a clear cause. Achievements that once seemed meaningful lose their impact. Goals that were pursued with determination no longer provide the sense of direction they once did. This is not necessarily a failure of those goals, but an indication that they may not align with something more essential within you. As this inner tension grows, it begins to influence your emotional responses. Small frustrations may feel disproportionate, and decisions that should be straightforward become unexpectedly heavy. You may find yourself hesitating, questioning, or withdrawing without fully understanding why. These are not random disruptions, but expressions of a deeper misalignment seeking recognition. The more this tension is ignored, the more complex it becomes. It does not remain contained. It extends into different areas of your life, affecting your relationships, your work, and your sense of self. You may begin to notice patterns repeating, situations that feel familiar yet unresolved, as if something is attempting to be addressed but never fully confronted. There is a tendency to attribute this discomfort to external factors, to assume that a change in circumstances will resolve it. While external changes can provide temporary relief, they do not address the underlying cause. The tension originates within, and it persists because it carries something that has not yet been acknowledged or integrated. Its persistence is not accidental, but indicative of something within you that refuses to be overlooked, even when you attempt to move past it without understanding. To confront yourself fully is not an act of simple recognition. It is an act that demands a form of loss. There is a tendency to believe that self-discovery will add something: clarity, strength, certainty. While this may be true in part, what is often overlooked is what must be relinquished in the process. The structures that have provided stability, even if they are incomplete or misaligned, cannot remain entirely intact when examined closely. You have built an identity that allows you to function, to be understood, and to navigate the expectations placed upon you. This identity is not accidental. It is the result of years of adaptation, refinement, and reinforcement. It provides a sense of continuity, a way to predict your own behavior and the reactions of others. To question it is to introduce instability into something that has been carefully maintained. Self-confrontation begins by exposing inconsistencies, places where your actions diverge from your deeper inclinations, where your beliefs conflict with your experiences. At first, these contradictions may seem manageable, something that can be adjusted without significant disruption. But as you look more closely, it becomes clear that they are not isolated. They are part of a larger pattern that cannot be resolved without altering the foundation on which your identity rests. This is where sacrifice becomes unavoidable. You may have to let go of certain beliefs that once gave you direction, even if they no longer hold true. You may have to release ambitions that were pursued not out of genuine alignment, but out of expectation or comparison. You may also have to face the loss of approval from others, and from the version of yourself that depended on that approval for validation. There is also the loss of certainty. The answers you once relied on may no longer feel sufficient, and the clarity you seek may not appear immediately. Instead, you are left in a space where questions become more prominent than conclusions. This uncertainty is not a sign of failure, but it can feel disorienting because it removes the illusion of control you once held. At a deeper level, self-confrontation requires you to release the comfort of avoidance, the habits that allowed you to bypass difficult truths. Distraction, rationalization, denial become less effective as awareness increases. What was once hidden becomes visible, and once seen, it cannot be easily ignored again. This process does not unfold without resistance. Part of you will attempt to preserve what is familiar, even if it is limiting. Another part will recognize the necessity of change, even if it is uncomfortable. Between these forces you are required to choose, not once, but repeatedly. As each layer of understanding reveals the extent of what must be relinquished, there is a limit to how long truth can remain unacknowledged before it begins to assert itself more forcefully. What is ignored does not disappear, it accumulates, gathering weight and complexity as it is repeatedly pushed aside. At first, this avoidance seems effective. You move forward, make decisions, and construct a life that appears coherent on the surface. The absence of immediate consequences creates the impression that what has been neglected is no longer relevant. Yet beneath this apparent stability, something continues to develop. The unrecognized truth does not remain passive, it adapts, finding indirect ways to enter your awareness. It may appear as recurring patterns, situations that repeat with slight variations, drawing your attention to something unresolved. It may surface through emotional intensity that seems disproportionate to the moment, suggesting that the reaction is rooted in something deeper than the present circumstance. Over time, the distance between what is acknowledged and what is denied becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. The effort required to sustain this separation grows, often without conscious recognition. You may find yourself feeling drained without a clear cause, or confronted with decisions that carry an unexpected sense of urgency. These are not isolated experiences, but indications that something within you is pressing for recognition. When truth is persistently ignored, it does not simply wait indefinitely. It begins to manifest in more concrete forms, often disrupting the structures you rely on. This disruption can take many shapes: sudden changes in direction, the breakdown of relationships, the collapse of plans that once seemed certain. These moments are frequently perceived as external misfortune, yet they often carry an internal origin that has gone unexamined. The intensity of such experiences is not arbitrary. It reflects the degree to which the underlying truth has been resisted. The longer it is avoided, the more forcefully it emerges, not as punishment, but as a correction. It compels you to confront what has been overlooked, not through quiet reflection, but through circumstances that are difficult to ignore or control. In these moments, the illusion of complete autonomy begins to weaken. You are faced with the realization that parts of your life have been shaped by elements you have not fully understood. The sense of control you once relied upon becomes unstable, replaced by a recognition that something deeper has been influencing your path all along. This is not a sudden transformation, but the culmination of a process that has been unfolding beneath your awareness, gradually intensifying until it can no longer remain concealed.